Hello everybody, thank you for joining me today for my first ever book review for the channel. This is book one of the Wheel of Time series, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Before I start this review, I'd like to say a few things since this is my first book review. First of all, I know about but have not seen the television show or any of the episodes that go along with this book, so this review will be based on the book only. And also, I just wanted to say I do like to read. Sometimes I get a kind of a book kick or a magazine kick or something like that, and I really thought it was time I started reading some books again. And I generally enjoy high fantasy or science fiction, a little bit of horror as well. So I am familiar with these types of books. I've read things like Lord of the Rings. I've read some of Game of Thrones, not all of it, but I have seen the television show all the way through. So I am familiar kind of with how high fantasy works, at least to a certain point. With that being said, what did I think of this book, The Eye of the World? Well, I know it's considered an all-time classic. This book came out in 1990. I think it's a very good high fantasy book, but there are a few things about it I think maybe you should be aware of before you read it. So this is definitely an introductory book. It's the first of a series of 15 books if you count the prequel or prologue, whatever you want to call it, that was written, some years later. This is definitely one of those books if you like kingdoms and magic and things like that. It's definitely a book that you'll enjoy. So one of the things I found really amazing about this book is the world building. This might be the best first book of any series I've ever read in terms of building an entire world. It's impressive how many cities, how many characters, just how many concepts Robert Jordan packs into this book. It is a fairly long book. It's over 700 pages, but I found all this to be interesting and just quite impressive. The book, though, does work as a standalone story, so if you just kind of think this book's okay, or even if you don't really care for it, you will get a beginning, middle, and end in this book. But it also leaves it open for many other books. I'm sure Robert Jordan probably wasn't sure if this book would be successful or not, so he probably put an ending in for that reason, but you could definitely see where the story is going to continue as well. I really like the characters. I think they're interesting. I have a little bit more to say about the characters, but I'll save that for the negatives of my review. But overall, I think they're interesting and they work well. I will say, though, that a few of the characters do seem very inspired by Lord of the Rings. They're definitely not rip-offs. There's enough that makes them unique to stand on their own, but there's definitely some influences there with a few of the characters. I really like how the magic system works. I won't get too detailed and spoil anything, but magic kind of affects males and females differently in this world, and I find the way it's handled to be refreshing and different from other series or things that I've seen. I thought that was very interesting. Again, the concept isn't fleshed out as much as I would like, but I'm sure it will be in books to come. Also, another thing that Robert Jordan does very well is if you are someone who likes descriptions of people or places, he's very descriptive. Sometimes he spends, some would argue, maybe a little bit too much time describing things like towns or scenery or, forests, things like that. But he does it as well as anyone I've ever seen, and he does a very good job of it. So that's the goods of this book. Now I'm going to go on to a few of the things that some may like, some may not. First of all, this is a very slow burn book. The first 100 pages or so are pretty slow moving. It's all set up, a lot of exposition, and not a lot really happens. To be honest, I don't mind this kind of book, but if you're someone who likes very fast-paced books that get right into the action, this might not be the book for you. Also, as much as I appreciate the variety of characters and how many there are, and some of them have interesting backstories, a few of them do feel a little samey, especially some of the female characters, which I'm hoping will be fleshed out further in the other books. Although they're interesting and their backstories are interesting, some things about them just don't separate them as much as maybe I would have liked, and like I said, maybe that will improve. Also, while I defend the slow pace at the beginning of this book, and I think it works, the book really picks up toward the middle and then kind of slows down again, almost to a screeching halt. There's an event that happens, I won't spoil it, but leads the book to go in a few different storylines or directions at once, and I thought this kind of part of the story really dragged out a bit, even more than the beginning, before it picks back up again. And I thought like the last 100 pages or so, the last part of the book, the conclusion, was really, really good. But there is kind of a lull in the middle that's kind of tough to take after you sit through the lull at the beginning. I found more problems with the one in the middle. But again, if you don't mind slow pacing and just character development, it might not bother you. But this book definitely, I think it's fair to say, could have some pacing issues for some, as it kind of goes up and down in terms of events that are happening in the story. And like I said, this could be a positive or a negative, but there's definitely a Lord of the Rings influence, not only in the characters, but in the story as well. Again, I've heard that future books kind of expand the story into its own original thing, which is great. So overall, do I recommend this book, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan? I'm going to say yes, for the simple reason that the world building and characters were interesting enough that I'm going to be starting to read the second book, The Great Hunt, very soon. So as an introductory book to a series, I think it's worth your time, especially if you're interested in reading a long series. Like I said, there's 15 books, or if you just want a good standalone fantasy story, it works in that regard as well. Just be aware this isn't the fastest paced book in the world. But overall, I do recommend this book. And maybe I'll talk more about it after I read the second book, The Great Hunt, to kind of compare and go from there. So let me know if you like this book review, if you're interested in more book reviews on the channel, or if maybe you would like them, but you would like me to use maybe a little different format or something like that. So once again, this is my review of Eye of the World from 1990. Definitely more videos to come soon. Thanks for your continued support, and thanks for watching.